Welcome to Community Cop. My name is Julian Harper, one of the co-founder members of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. I'm here today with my two co-hosts. First of all, Noel Leader.
Peace, family.
Second of all, Michael Graves, aka Big Mike.
Namaste.
As you know, we always have our historical piece because we have our in-house historian, Michael Graves. Michael, I know it's the anniversary of the death of Emmett Till, August 27th, 1955.
Yes, no doubt. For the most part, I would say that is the initial spark of the modern day civil rights movement. Was the heinous death and torture of Emmett Till in Money, Mississippi in 1955. Some might attribute the spark that started the civil rights movement to the Montgomery bus boycott, but even Rosa Parks herself said what motivated her to sit when other people would not dare take that seat was because of what happened to Emmett Till. So I think we standing on good ground when we say that Emmett Till was that spark. Certainly, there was 15-year-old child raised in Chicago who was going to see his grandparents and his uncles in Mississippi. Consequently, he did not know the code of the Confederacy of the South, and his mother tried the best that she could to tell him the do's and don'ts, because this was his first trip into the Deep South. And as it were, they claimed that he whistled or made a snide remark to a white woman who was working behind the counter in the candy store when he went in with his cousin. Now that she's elderly now and her days are numbered, she has admitted that she lied about the whole thing, that he never said anything out of order or he didn't whistle at her. But that white woman, Carolyn Bryant, I think her name was, she cost him his life, and her husband and his brother with other whites killed him, tortured and killed him, beat him to death, blew his brains out. And big ups to Jet Magazine for that. Ebony, the smaller one, Ebony, for the picture that still is striking to this very day of how Emmett Till looked after that heinous act committed by white supremacists.
Yeah, Emmett Till is the only one of thousands of members of our community who was murdered at the hands of white citizens in this country. And the cause of much, or far too often, of the suffering of members of our community is that white woman creating lies in order to conjure up, this kind of brutal act. We see the same thing today. Some people call the term Karen, but with the woman who made the accusations against Emmett Till is the original Karen. But there's other Karens throughout the history of America where white women, for whatever reason, made up lies in order to get African Americans beaten and sometimes murdered. So this Karen legacy is as American as apple pie.
Right. And I would venture to say that this has happened even prior to that. That white women and white folks have placed the blame on African American men, women, children of crimes that they have not committed. They even depicted this in movies, showing how they would falsely blame Black males for crimes that they did not commit. So this is not a new phenomenon. And again, it has happened even prior to, I would say even happened prior to the heinous death and murder of Emmett Till.
I think you're right. I just think what made this one a little bit differently is that he wasn't from that area, that he was from Chicago, and that he was they killed young boys before, but the fact that he was from Chicago and the fact that he was visiting, the fact that they went into the house where his uncle and his grandfather was, and actually physically removed him. Went bedroom to bedroom, snatched him out of the third bedroom they went upon, took him out and said, "That's that little inn from Chicago." They snatched him out, never to be seen again. And of course, the grandfather pleaded with them and said, "I don't know what he did, but I'll whip him right now for you, whatever he did, but please don't take him away." And they took him away, and they had a gun, but I'm sure in the household they had something also, and they chose to and unfortunately they chose to let them two white guys take them out at gunpoint. Now they didn't do it just on their white skin privilege. They did it at gunpoint, and of course he was never seen again.
Right. Okay, Michael. Also, the anniversary on the March on Washington, August 28th, 1963.
Yeah, I'll just say briefly, that was the march that so many people relate to this day that don't study the civil rights movement. They more or less repeat the often spoken words, "I have a dream." That was that day. But that was a march on Washington for jobs and freedom. And we often forget that part, jobs and freedom. So it was historic in the sense that that's what people remember Dr. King for, that speech. And John Lewis and a whole lot of other people spoke that day. There were 18 speakers, and that was the largest gathering at that point. So that's why it's remembered, and that's why people to this day, what you see this weekend, people going out there to sort of remake that march, but that march was significant that it was for jobs and freedom.
Right. And lastly,
let me just say, let me just comment real quick. Martin Luther King, of course, is known during that particular event to give that speech, the "I Have a Dream" speech. And although I have nothing but love, for Martin Luther King, and it was a very inspirational speech at the time where he said that he dreams of a day when all people will be judged by the content, of their character, not their race. But in 2020, we have to understand it's time to stop dreaming. That dream is not going to happen. It's not going to come to pass, not in America. It hasn't come to pass all this time. So we have to wake ourselves up, and we have to get out of that dreaming stage, start doing works, start making things happen, because they haven't been happening, up until this point. But kudos to Martin Luther King and all those who brought attention to the plight of African Americans back then. But in 2020, you got to stop sleeping, because the only time you can dream is when you sleep. You got to wake up and start working.
Yes, sir.
And as you stated, brother, and kudos to all the people that are working, because there's a lot of people that are out there fighting, standing, protesting, and I'm sure there are many people that are planning, trying to come up with strategies, and I know we all in agreement that we really need an economic strategy to address some of the issues that are occurring in this nation through racism and white supremacy, as well as a political strategy as well. But Michael, also, and last but not least, Fred Hampton's birthday, August 30th, 1948.
Yeah, just want to remember the great Fred Hampton. Oftentimes we talk about him being assassinated by the Chicago Police Department with guidance from the FBI, but certainly we have to look at him as a remarkable young man. Started out as a youth leader in the NAACP, went on to become the leader in Chicago, Illinois, Chicago, with respect to the Black Panther Party for self-defense. At 21 years old, he showed so much leadership, and he was charismatic, well-spoken, strong, uncompromising brother. And I think that they just had that fear that he would walk in the shoes of a Garvey, of a Malcolm, and so many others, that uncompromising approach to fight for our people. And so they cut him down. They used the plan, a confidential informant who poisoned the whole group that stayed in that apartment that night. and he had also drew a diagram of who would be in what room, unfortunately. And he was assassinated by Chicago Police Department, and big ups to the brothers in the Chicago Police Department who pointed that out later, that this was an assassination and that the impetus came from the FBI.
And, you know, it's interesting that all of these subjects, that historical subjects that Michael talked about, is you can fast forward in 2020 and see actions being emulated, you know, today, even though some of these things, Emmett Till died so many years ago. You know, we still have the Cameron situation. Emmett Till, white woman, was the cause of all of that. We have white women today causing all sorts of confusion, making false allegations against African Americans. You talked about the March on Washington. I know Sharpton coming up very soon is having another March on Washington on this Saturday in 2020. Why are we still marching? You know, there's definitely a need to bring issues. So those who want to go, is definitely a need, a reason to bring issues. But unfortunately, we still have to bring issues. Then he talked about Fred Hampton being assassinated by police officers who had a no-knock warrant. Just came in there and claimed that somebody fired a shot outward. So they returned, I don't know how many shots, over 100 shots?
Well, yeah, it was several hundred.
Right. Okay.
It looked like 1,000 rounds went into that apartment, but it was in the hundreds.
Right. Okay. So they claimed one shot came out and they returned 100 into his apartment, killing him. You know, the same thing happened with sister, what's her name? Breonna Taylor. Police came to her apartment with a no-knock warrant, claiming that one person fired a round outside, so they returned fire and ultimately murdered our sister Breonna, innocent victim of police criminality. So the more things change, the more things remain the same. From Emmett Till to the March on Washington, Brother Fred Hampton, we are facing the same crisis in 2020.
And just want to tell you, Noel, since you pointed that out, actually it was overheard by the wife and another survivor that in the apartment, he was mortally wounded, but he wasn't dead. Fred Hampton at the time, Mark Clark was already dead. They killed him. His shots went right into his heart. But Fred Hampton was still alive, and they overheard a police officer, while they were being ushered out, said that he was still alive. And then you heard 2 more rounds. And then he said, good, he's dead now.
But that sounds like murder to me.
Absolutely.
So then we can talk about police murdering Fred Hampton. And fast forward to 2020 to all the police murders that we have today. And we're going to talk about some on this program. The more things change, the more things remain the same.
Good point.
All right. Okay, one of the first topics that we're going to talk about now, and thank you for that historical piece and your elaboration on the historical incidents that have occurred, Noel. There was a video shown of a police shooting in Wisconsin of a Wisconsin man, Jacob Blake, as he was entering his car. Now it was a report that there was a dispute, a domestic dispute. The police responded. It's alleged that they tried to stop him, and as you can see in the video that's been playing all over, as he was attempting to walk to a van, a police officer was telling him to stop, tried to grab him by his tank top shirt, and as he pulled away from the police officer and attempted to get into his vehicle, they fired multiple rounds at him in his back. At this point, from what we understand, he's paralyzed, and his children allegedly were in the car at the time. And this happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Noel?
Yeah, well, this video, of course, is very hard to watch, as is most of the police shootings of unarmed black men. It's very difficult to watch. But from the outset, let me say, first of all, condolences to our brother Blake and his family. He's the latest victim of aggressive police officers, overly aggressive police officers and abusive police officers. As you stated, Julian, they were responding to a family dispute, allegedly. And our position when we do the workshops at 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Care is that when police officers engage in civilian populations, that we teach that our members of our community should comply with the police officers' demands, even if you disagree with them, that on the scene is not the appropriate time to challenge them, because far often than not, you're going to lose. And unfortunately, this brother, as you stated, Julian, is paralyzed from the waist down. Officers wanted him to stay in a particular area. He didn't believe that he had to, so he attempted to enter his vehicle, and he was ultimately shot. But after having said that, we looked at his actions, and we may say that we would have encouraged him to comply, but his non-compliance should not have resulted in him being shot in the back 7 times. And the only reason why I brought up his actions is because many, in attempting to explain or to justify the police officer's actions, will talk about his refusal to comply with the officer's demands. And if you want to go there and say that he didn't comply, fine. But his non-compliance should not have resulted in officers using deadly physical force and shooting him 7 times in his back. If his actions were inappropriate and people deem it so, then they have to look at the officer's actions and deem his actions to be inappropriate as well. Julian, because you were my partner in the 28th precinct. If we were confronting an individual and told him to stay in one place, we're not going to follow him from the passenger side of the vehicle to the front of the vehicle to the driver's side of the vehicle, allow him to open up the door and reach in, while the officer's following him, with his guns drawn. If the officers had an issue with him going inside the vehicle, he should attempt to physically stop him and didn't have to use deadly physical force to stop him from entering the vehicle. There was, I think, at least 4 officers present. So there's no reason, officers are charged to use the minimal amount of force necessary to resolve an issue, not the maximum. You're supposed to use the minimum amount of force to address an issue. Deadly physical force in this particular incident was inappropriate. Poor tactics, once again, was utilized by the police officers. If they didn't want him to get in the vehicle, they should have physically stopped him. Not by deadly physical force, but there's 2, 3, 4 of you. You should have physically tried to restrain him from entering the vehicle. To me, and I'm sometimes very cynical of police officers, it's almost as if he had in the back of his head, if he get in that vehicle, I'm going to open up on him. So let him walk there, let him open the door. And once he opened the door, let him walk. Officer's actions was criminally inappropriate. Hopefully he will be charged and prosecuted. And I'm not distracted in 1 iota, and there's no justification for the officer's actions, 1 iota, if you want to say that he should have yielded to the officer's demands and remain on the side of the vehicle. Even if you want to agree that's true, the penalty for non-compliance in that situation of officer's order is not death or not being paralyzed or not being shot 7 times in the back.
Right.
Well,
And one thing that I just I was reading that the governor of the state, he made a statement in support of the family. And one of the things that I find in past cases, that even when elected officials find support and they understand that there has been some inappropriate actions committed by the officers, when it comes down to the judicial system and ensuring that there's a prosecution and a fair review of the case, those words sometimes disappear, and these officers still get away unscathed in some of these unnecessary and abusive use of force shootings.
Well, I'll just say that, and I think you laid it out, Noel, so I'll buttress your point by just saying that when you have 4 to 6 officers present, there's no need for deadly physical force in this particular scenario. Now, I can't say that it was non-compliance because I don't know what verbally took place. I know that he just stopped a serious argument between 2 women, and I'm not sure was he being given strict instructions or whether he felt he could walk away. So I'm not sure if he was clear on there was an arrest getting ready to take place. Now, if they was going to arrest him, they should have subdued him if he was ignoring their verbal instructions to maybe stop, put his hands behind his back, or lean over the hood of the car, what have you, whatever. They might have said to him, if there was non-compliance, then even if that was the case, then it's still a setup in the end to let him open his car door. So I would say, but I'm not saying that in some ways he was responsible at all, because I'm not clear yet on what was said. Now, I know that in the situation in Oklahoma with Terrance Crutch, I believe his name was, and the officer was police officer, her name was Shelby. When a car broke down on a highway, as y'all remember, he got out of his car and was walking towards 4 or 5 police officers, and it was a helicopter overhead. He was walking towards them. None of the male officers said anything. It was the female officer that pointed at him, and you could see she was upset, told him to get back in his car. So it wasn't like they were stopping him. He was stopping them because his car broke down on the highway. So when she sternly told him to go back to his car, he walked back to his car, and right when he got to the car door, she shot him and killed him. So he was compliant. She was the one that told him, get back in the car. He got back in the car, and when he put his hands on the window or the door, at that point, she opened up and shot rounds and killed him. Maybe to the surprise of the other officers. And she was not found guilty of her charges. But in any event, this is reminiscent that, first of all, I think we should dispel that myth that police officers do not wake up that morning saying they're going to kill a black person. And I think that a few months ago, Noel beautifully pointed out how you can't say that anymore, because the fact of the matter is there are police officers that can't wait to shoot a black person. They're anxious, they're over-aggressive, waiting for that opportunity. So if he was non-compliant, then it was well with the souls of those police officers, if they have souls, because they wanted him to open his car door to give them a license to open up on him, because he could have been easily subdued when you have between 4 and 6 police officers present. If they didn't want him to walk anymore, they could have subdued him. They could have been more stern in their verbal instructions, so that when he would stop, now that if they choose to, at least if you pounce on him, he's not going to be killed by you subduing him. But unfortunately, he was shot 7 times in the back, which means to me, you were trying to kill him. Okay. You were not trying to stop a threat. In a dangerous situation in the car stop where you do have to use your weapon, most police agencies say something to the effect, their guidelines around maybe shooting 3 rounds and then reassess. But to pump 7 rounds in him, in that callous way in his back, with 2 children in the car, 2 children could have gotten hurt. To me, that was an abuse of power, and certainly those police officers should be charged.
Right. Yeah, it's these shootings are ringing noise around the entire globe, around the entire nation. Within the NBA, the NFL, across the board, sports figures across the board. The Milwaukee Bucks had a game tonight. They were supposed to play, but they canceled the game. Both teams decided that they're not going to play and protest in opposition of this shooting. So, they decided they're not going to play the game. And I know, Mike, you were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, George Hill from the Milwaukee Bucks kind of led the charge. I'm sure that a lot of other players felt that way, but certainly he was first in line talking about it, that the game should not be played. I want to give big ups to LeBron James, so many other players that have been very vocal in their talking about, even prior to this last shooting, for them to stand up. These are millionaires who, most of them don't have a care in the world. They are not in fear of being in those type situations for the most part. It can happen, but for the most part, they're not worried about the mundane situations that Black folks find themselves in daily. So for them to step up, I have to give them kudos, because I might be critical of them when there was too much silence around Tamir Rice and so many other cases. Big ups to the Miami Heat, what they did with respect to Trayvon Martin, which was led by LeBron James and Dwayne Wade in that situation. So I want to give them credit. I think that they should have been more supportive 3 years ago of Colin Kaepernick when he was talking about Black men, women, and children unarmed being killed by police officers. He was not talking about the military. It had nothing to do with the military and the flag and your allegiance to America. He was talking about Black men, women, and children not in the commission of a crime, being killed by police departments, sheriffs, marshals, what have you. So they should have been supportive then, but at least they're stepping up now. Maya Moore left the WNBA. She is the best female basketball player that I've ever seen. That's my personal opinion. I've never seen a woman play basketball the way Maya Moore plays. She stepped away this past season from last year because a Black man is unjustly laying in jail now with all these other cases that people are being killed. She was fed up and walked away from basketball. She might return, but it's good to see that these brothers that have a lot on the line and a lot to lose are stepping up. So I have to commend them. I think that the football players might follow suit. Now, there's some people that are not sincere, but because they should have supported Colin Kaepernick in his hour of need. However, I have to give it to them. They stood up. They're boycotting. They're doing something that so-called Black leaders, they ain't really Black leaders, they're leading Blacks, will not dare do to corporate America, which is the boycott. A boycott is fundamental. That's what brought Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. into prominence, the Montgomery bus boycott. And now these brothers are boycotting. When in the Trayvon Martin situation in Sanford, Florida, the leadership there, the local leadership, was about to do a boycott. It was Reverend Sharpton, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and Mark Mariel from the Urban League that said there will be no boycott. And so I got to give them brothers credit for doing what they're doing, because that's big and meaningful.
And and the level of anger that the athletes are manifesting, which have caused them to stop playing basketball, which is phenomenal and a very historical event, is based upon the fact that these police murders, these police shootings are not nothing new. So we have two pandemics, at least two pandemics occurring in the United States. Not only do we have a coronavirus that are killing Americans, and particularly disproportionately African Americans, we have a pandemic of police murders, police criminality throughout the nation, across the nation, of police officers murdering unarmed, innocent members of the African American community, men, women, and children. So there's nothing new. Those of you who think that this is something new, that this is a result of Donald Trump's administration, surely he contributes to the atmosphere. The police murders have been happening infinitum. The only thing that is new is that we have video cameras. Police officers have recording cameras on the vehicles, some on their uniform. People have telephones. Now in America, and Americans all across the country has a front seat to view this outrageous, callous, illegal activity by police officers against members of the African American communities. Of course, this is something that we've known and that we've seen for generations. And now in the whole world, including white America, these images are being broadcasted all around the globe, and people are commenting on the quality of law enforcement in America, the criminality of law enforcement in America, in particular against African Americans. And it's outrageous, and that's why basketball players, have stated, listen, this has got to stop, this has got to cease. We're not playing no basketball because this issue is more important than the basketball game. And I'm hoping it continues to catch on because, as I stated, the United States, we not only have one pandemic going on right now, some people say a pandemic, we have at least two, coronavirus and the police murdering African Americans virus. Both of them are equally outrageous and should be stopped immediately.
Right. And because of the shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin, there's been protests. And let me say this, with that, these officers in this particular shooting, apparently in this town, they don't have body cameras. They're supposedly not getting body cameras for another 2 years, which is outrageous. I don't even understand that, but supposedly that's what they're stating, and that's probably why they're gonna say they don't have any footage from the officer's point of view or perspective. But with this shooting, there's been protests. And while the protests, there have been a lot of militias that have gone out into the town of Kenosha. There's been an additional shooting. A 17-year-old young white male has shot at least 3 people that we know of, has been reported. 2 died and 1 is injured. Now, there's video footage of this young white male walking down the street with a long gun towards the police. People are screaming, he just shot somebody, he just shot somebody. He puts his hands up in the air. The police are asking, is someone shot? Is someone shot? You can hear this being said on the audio. And the police drive right by him. Now he's walking with his hands up as if he's surrendering, but the police chose to drive right by him, continue on their search, I guess, to see who was shot, and he actually walks right by the police. Now, there's more information that I have relative to this particular case, but I'm going to give Noel and Michael opportunity to talk about that aspect because there's something else that happened prior to that that I want to bring to the audience attention.
What do you do? Get it out!
So, Noel.
No, this is outrageous. Totally unacceptable, totally outrageous. And it shows you how police departments, police officers, and I don't like to say department because the department is an invisible entity. Police officers, human beings, white officers are so blinded, far too many of them, by racism, by racist white supremacist mentality. Here you have a man which I believe is an AK-47 strapped over his shoulders. Officers are responding to people shot. There's a shooting. That means there's potentially people injured, but there's definitely a perpetrator with a weapon. And you have this white male, his name is Kyle, to say his name right, Rittenhouse, Kyle Rittenhouse, a white boy, like you said, 17-year-old, a white murderer, walking past a police officer with an AK-47 with his hands raised. The officers drive past him. Other officers stop and ask him, yo, do you know if anybody shot?
We're protecting from the citizens, and I just got pepper sprayed by a person in the crowd.
So you had non-lethal, but you didn't respond.
We don't have non-lethal.
So you guys are full on ready to defend the property.
Yes, we are.
And then you have a man with a weapon, with a white man. So police officers have tunnel vision when it comes white skin. Nothing trumps white skin. Not a man with a gun after a shooting. You're looking for a perpetrator with a gun. Not members that were protesting, yelling to the police officers. That's him. That's the shooters. Police officers just totally ignored that. Not the fact that he has his hands up as if he was expecting to give up, because he know he shot somebody. He know he had a weapon brandished. So he said, he kind of concluded, oh, they got to stop me, so let me put my hands up so they don't shoot me. And all of that, these police officers just roll right past them. And some even asked them, is somebody shot? This shows the racist, outrageous, white supremacist mentality of far too many white police officers. We are far past the time where we can say this is a few bad apples. Law enforcement in America, the United States, has a serious racial problem. White police officers have a serious racial problem. Far too many of them are racist. Far too many of them are white supremacists. And they patrol the streets with a white supremacist or racist mentality, where white people, even criminals, receive the benefit of the doubt. They receive white skin privileges. I don't know how many times you see a white man with a knife chasing a police officer. There's a video now, the white man, this white police officer female is backing up. He actually chased her around the car saying, I'll kill you, I'll carve you up. And she used constraint, which is good. But far too often when the suspected perpetrator, and a lot of these instances where blacks are being murdered, they're traffic infractions. They're minor violations, not even crimes, when we wind up blacks being killed. There's an overly aggressive response when white police officers, sometimes white Latino police officers, confront instances involving African Americans, be it a criminal situation or non-criminal situation. And we have to come to grips with what we're seeing. They walked past, they were in pursuit of a perpetrator, a potential perpetrator, who had just shot somebody, and the perpetrator walked right past them and they did nothing because they have tunnel vision. The only thing they see is white skin, and nothing in the mind of a white supremacist trumps white skin. They just automatically wanted to assume that he was the perpetrator, even though he had the gun right across his chest. Outrageous. And this is something that the white media is not pointing out yet. I haven't heard none of these white press talk about that. Talk about the negligence of these white police officers who had a man who just murdered two people walk right past him. And he wound up getting arrested later on. I think he went back to Illinois and they had a warrant for his arrest. So he was on the scene. He walked past at least 3 cars full of police officers and not arrested. This is outrageous. Outrageous.
Well, I think that I will borrow your term. You said they had tunnel vision?
Tunnel vision.
Yes, well, they also had tunnel hearing.
Yes, sir.
Because the crowd told the police officers, that's the shooter.
What do you do? Get it out!
He just shot them. Hey, dude right here just shot them. Dude right here just shot all them down there. That dude just shot them right there. That dude right here. Here.
The crowd said that's the guy who was shooting. And they ignored that. So it's one thing not to see it. It's a whole nother thing not to hear it. When you're being told by the crowd that's the shooter, and then you're telling him indirectly to leave by saying,
exactly.
When you say to him, was there somebody shot? Was there shooting? You telling him leave.
Exactly.
The white cops are telling him, remove yourself from this area, because they're talking to him and they're basically saying, we're not gonna arrest you. Walk away. We know you just shot some black folks, just walk away. So they were communicating to him in a sophisticated way, but that won't work with 100 blacks in law enforcement. We can see right through it. They were telling him to leave. when they was asking about a shooter, you ignoring people that's telling you he's the shooter. And they asking, was there some shots fired over here? Was there somebody shooting over here? And a guy is standing in front of you with an AR-15.
Right.
I mean, come on now. Tunnel vision, tunnel hearing, that's white skin privilege at its finest.
Yes, sir.
So he was in the militia. That militia should be investigated, and I guarantee you that you will find that that militia has a relationship with all those neighboring police departments. Because he's from Illinois, and since that was in Wisconsin, Kenosha, Wisconsin, I guarantee you that there's a connection. These Aryan Nation, these white militias, right-wing extremists, they're all involved in stuff like that. So they didn't listen. They were told. As a matter of fact, it was people who gave the information from the internet on who he was. They did the homework. They did the police detective deductive reasoning and used social media to say this was the guy. They gave him a name and a clue and all of that stuff. Police were trying their best to ignore what had transpired. So that only shows you that there's interdiction into drugs, interdiction into weapons when they want that. When they choose not to want the perpetrator, they can act like in fake moves, and that was nothing but a fake move when a man is standing in front of you with an AR-15 and you know the shots came from the area where he's standing and he's the only one with AR-15. Come on.
That's right.
Now, one of the things that we have to understand, and Mike, you're right, you know, there is a relationship. Minutes prior to the shooting, the police, the Kenosha police, were in conversation with members of the militia. They were thanking them for their support. They said, you guys are really doing a good job.
Right.
We thank you guys for helping us out. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you guys. You need water? Seriously. Guys to our right, you need water.
We need water.
We'll throw you one.
Thank you.
All right, come on, guys, let's get out of here. Damn. Which way should we go?
Great, we'll give you some. We'll bring a couple. Thank you. Yes, you. You are a civilian. This area is closed to them. You're trespassing. Leave. Leave now.
Can you throw one up here? Officer, can you throw one
We got a couple. We got to save a couple, but we'll give you a couple. We appreciate you guys. We really do.
Hey, can we go this way? Can we walk this way? Hold on. I need a step.
I'm sure they have a lot of bottles of water.
That's all we can spare.
Thank you.
Nice truck,
You're
guys.
going to have to get out of there. You're in the last warning. You're going to have to move south or you're going to have to get off this block. This is the last warning.
They were giving them water. They were holding conversations with them. They were giving them praise for the works that they felt that they were doing in assisting law enforcement in dealing with the protesters and protecting the homes and the properties of that particular community. So there was definitely a relationship. So when that, in my thoughts, when they saw that 17-year-old, and then now listen to what we're saying, a 17-year-old with an assault rifle. We're not talking about an adult man that may have been trained, an ex-military man. First of all, I don't think they should have it either. But I'm just saying, just in the scope of this particular incident, a 17-year-old child who may not in some states be allowed to drink, vote,
That's right.
or drive, walking down the streets during a protest that even police officers have difficulty dealing with members of the community during this time, with an AR-15, with an assault rifle, and they're not appalled by it. They don't think that they should stop him. They don't think that they should question him. They don't think that he shouldn't be carrying an assault rifle. That is outrageous. I mean, what kind of policing are we talking about in America? But that goes back to the statement that was made by Noel and Michael. When you talk about white folks breaking the law, walking around as these militias, carrying assault rifles, they are not looked upon as criminals or doing anything wrong. There is a blanket of criminality that's thrown over black folks by law enforcement. But when they look at white people who have committed, may committed, or may be about to commit crime, they have jaded vision. They do not see this. They do not see the criminality. They don't want to see it, and they ignore it.
Well, I think Noel made the salient point. I think I made a few points, but the salient point was made by Noel Leader. He said, why hasn't anyone in the media addressed that situation and questioned why? You don't even have to be accusatory. I think Noel is on to something. They should have asked the police officials, the management, why did those police officers ignore the crowd? Just say, what happened there? Just ask the question. You don't even have to accuse. No one has even mentioned that. That should not have to be pointed out by 100 blacks in law enforcement.
Facts.
Why didn't somebody on the ground mention that? That's a great point, Noel.
And it denotes complicity. You know, it denotes that there's a problem because, you know, I mean, when earlier, Michael, you said that there's a lot of interactions between these militias and law enforcement agencies throughout the nation. You know, I mean, this is clearly proof of it. You know, they just ignored. They commended these individuals, and when you have a contentious group, when you have people protesting, maybe looting, or maybe they're angry. There's a whole lot of anger. And then you have the other side with militias with weapons. You know, that any responsible police agency would monitor that situation very carefully. If I was a police commissioner, if these individuals had the right to bear arms and walk around with arms, I would make sure that they were secluded in an isolated location. You can't walk the street that wee hours of the morning while there's a heated protest going on. That is utter irresponsible for a law enforcement agency to allow that happen. And then, Julian, as you said earlier, they had conversations, commended them. These individuals aren't trained law enforcement officers, but they're walking around your city streets with AK-47s and AR-15s, and the only reason why this was allowed because they're white, because they have white skin. If these were black men or black teenagers walking around with AR-15s and AK-47s, you better believe, even if they had the right to have these weapons, there would have been some attention given to these individuals while they were walking the street. So there's a bigger issue that needs to be raised as to why was this murderer allowed to leave the scene after conversing with police officers with the murder weapon on his shoulder in plain view, and the officers just allowed him to walk away. I mean, this is, not only are we outraged over the murder of brother Jacob Blake, but to follow up with this second murderer is as you stated, Julian, outrageous, and I haven't used this word in a long time. It's diabolical.
And one of the things that I want to talk about, and Noel, when you said these police officers have a relationship with some of these militias, I believe that some of these police officers are part of the militias. I don't think that they're just friends that they are having casual conversation with. They see them sometimes, they support them. Some of these guys, I believe, take part and are active members in some of these militias. But one of the things that really strikes me, and I was just looking at the photo, and I'm sure we're going to show the photo of this 17-year-old. He looks like a 17-year-old. I mean, how not you think in your mind as law enforcement that, listen, this is a kid walking around with an AR-15. This has to be questioned. Now, I don't know what the legal age is in Wisconsin to be a registered gun owner or have the right to be in possession of a firearm in an open carry state, but I'm almost sure, and if not, they need to find new legislators, that a 17-year-old does not have the right to own, possess, or carry a firearm in an open carry state.
What are you doing out here? Obviously, you're armed, and you're in front of this business we saw burning last night, so what's up?
So people are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business, and part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I need to protect myself, obviously, but I also have my med kit.
It's a total irresponsible, and we're going to see how this thing pans out. What happened to this young man? I know they said he was charged with first-degree intentional homicide.
Yeah.
You know, I know there's some excuse. I've read some of the articles saying that his weapon went off when individuals tried to wrestle his weapon out of his hand. You know, so they're already preparing excuses, similar to what they do with police officers. Oh, I feared for my safety. Now I'm pretty sure that's what the officer is going to say who shot Jacob Blake, that he wasn't scared of what he was reaching for in his vehicle. But that's why NBA players have boycotted and stopped playing basketball tonight, even though this is the playoffs, a very important time of their season, because they are outraged of what's going on. And we should, all Americans should be outraged.
And they canceled all 3 games, and also the WNBA is boycotting, and they're not playing as well. So, you know, as we always say, you know, kudos to those who understand that there is a major problem with law enforcement in this nation and with white supremacy across the board. So kudos to all of those. Also, you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, these stories, and we always talk about this, Noel, these stories never end. When we stop talking about this tomorrow or whenever this quells, there's going to be something else. It just doesn't stop. And, you know, unfortunately, it goes across the board, not just with law enforcement. This goes across just white supremacists, you know, nationally. You know, I wouldn't even say globally, but right now we're talking national. A Florida woman slapped an 11-year-old young black male. Now, they were in an amusement park. They were riding go-karts. The young man hit her go-kart as they were riding. She gets out of her go-kart. She smacks this 11-year-old young male in the face, causing swelling to his eye, and she uses racial slurs against, now I'm saying an 11-year-old child who was at an amusement park having fun. I'm assuming, obviously, he was with his family. He's driving the car. And I know with those go-karts, sometimes they have them as bumper cars. So I don't understand how this woman could get so upset and find it appropriate under any circumstance to strike an 11-year-old child. Now, she was arrested and charged with felony child abuse for her actions. She admitted, yes, I did smack the young man, but I didn't use a racial slur. You know, I mean, this is just over the top. I mean, these stories are nonstop. The aggression against African people, whether we're 10-2, whether we're selling lemonade or in front of our homes, whether we're in parks, no matter what we're doing, having picnics, there is a nonstop attack on African people. And now that we got an opportunity to see the videos, there are people that are coming forward through social media. It is being plastered all over society. Everyone gets an opportunity to see it. The noise is being made, but it doesn't appear that the actions of these white supremacists and these over-aggressive policing tactics are quelling. They're not stopping.
So what we see in all of these instances, and when we talk about police criminality, all these white police officers are overly aggressive to members of the African-American community, we have to see the role, the pinnacle role, the very important role that the white woman plays in all this. From Emmett Till to our historical piece, to the white woman that you talked about that smacked this child, you have the white woman. You know, we have, you know, this is a mother who was supposed to be tender, compassionate to children, but far too often we see these Karens, from Emmett Till all the way up to this incident that you talk about, where you have a child either intentionally or accidentally hit the go-kart of a white woman, probably a mother, and she acted violently because she didn't see a child. She seen black. And all of these instances that we talk about and we constantly talk about, that is the issue. Racist mentality of whites in terms of dealing with people of African descent. And I don't care if it's men, women, or children, they act aggressively to black. They have an issue with the blackness. And they have a mental issue that white people have. And we have to look at the very important role. If the mothers are the first teachers, we have to look at the very important role that white women are playing in all this. Her actions should get, should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, especially since the kid showed manifestations of injury. And I hope that she will be prosecuted, aggressively, because this is a child. Trust me, this white woman didn't see a child. She seen black.
And let me just say this. Her name is Haley Zager, and this happened in Palm Beach County, Florida. and the sheriff's department from that county had made the arrest. And like I said, the young man ended up with a swollen eye. Mike, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I'll just say that I'm not surprised at all. This is what white women have been doing our entire sojourn here. I just want to see her prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and I think there should be a hate crime attached.
That's right.
Consequently, I want to see her do hard time, not no 6 months suspended sentence, and so nothing happens. I want to see her go to jail and spend some time in jail, and maybe while she's there, somebody can show her the error of her ways, because she'll get smacked.
Now, Michael, we were talking earlier about a case that happened in Georgia. A Georgia state trooper was arrested for the murder of a gentleman who they had pulled over or attempted to pull over for a broken tail light or broken light. And they ran him off the road, and he was murdered. He was shot. He was killed by the police.
Yeah, well, his Georgia state trooper, Jacob Gordon Thompson, 27 years old. 27 years old. He chased down Edward Roosevelt Lewis, a 60-year-old man in a car. He spotted that the tail light was out, ran him into a ditch, and when the car crashed into the ditch, he got out of his car, according to witnesses, walked right over there to the car that had crashed, and shot Lewis in the head. This is a Georgia state trooper that did this. The brother Lewis never got out of his car, 60-year-old man. This guy walked right over to his car in a cold, callous way, shot him right in the head, killing him. His police department, I mean, as a sheriff, a deputy, a trooper, he was not arrested by other troopers. He was not arrested by the local police department. He was arrested by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI. That's who arrested him. So I would just say that we need to look very closely, because I'm sure his union will have a coterie of excuses to justify what happened.
Well, Michael, I know people call you the historian, but you didn't. One thing you didn't say, and I just have to, maybe it was an oversight. You didn't say that the brother had an AR-15 or AK-47.
Oh, he didn't have a weapon at all.
Oh, I'm sorry. He didn't have a weapon at all.
That's correct.
And the officer still shot him
in the head.
In all of these instances where we're dealing with minor violations, traffic violations, and many of them that wind up when members of our community are killed, we have to understand the role that race plays in all of these instances. All they see is black, and when they see black and they have demented mentality, they see criminal.
Right. All right. We're running out of time. We're about to do our closing comments. Noel Leader, go ahead.
All right, Lenny Lou, Kitty Cat, I love you. Little Mo, I love you. And as I stated, I love and have man love and respect, as we all do, for Martin Luther King. But it's time for our people to stop dreaming. Them days is over. We got to wake up, get up out of our stupor, and see America for what she is, what she has been, what she will continue to be, unless we make some demands.
Big Mike?
Yeah, I haven't seen those beautiful leader sisters in a long time, and and the rest of the family. So hope everybody's doing well. And I, certainly I believe they're in God's unchanging hand.
Oh yeah.
Just remember that the axe forgets what the tree remembers. Black man, black woman, protect the black child, accept your own, and be yourself.
All right. I have to thank my beautiful sisters who always watch the show and always critique and give me some good pointers. Thank you, Sharon and Darlene, for watching. I love you guys. Leader family, I nothing but love. Every time I call Noel and I get the opportunity to speak to one of his sisters, that's always a beautiful thing. The Graves family, we love you guys. We love you all. We appreciate what you do. Veronica Kick, phenomenal sister, we thank you for everything that you do to get this show off the ground. And I know everybody appreciates your great work. Sheila Berry, Nat Wood, Baby, my man Big D, everybody's doing a phenomenal job, and we really thank you guys. And Community Cop family, we thank you just for your support, for watching us, and keeping us on our toes. We really appreciate the great support we get from you all. And Noel, you know I always got to give you the final word.
Yes, sir. And I just want to say real quick, big kudos to the People's Film Festival. And if you'll ever have a chance to watch this phenomenal film, it's called The Meeting That Shaped America by Christopher Adams and Joshua Austin. The Meeting That Shaped America is a phenomenal film. Peace.